Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is incredibly important, and everyone is going to use this in their assignment. Okay, in some way. It may not be the absolute focus of what you're doing, but it is going to be something which relates very much to what I'm asking you to do in the assignment, which is to describe your experience of playing a game. This is the primary lens, if you like, which game studies uses to describe that experience. It is a theory which originated in the 1970s with a Czech psychologist, and we're going to say this all together. So repeat after me. Me highly, she sent me highly. Me highly, she sent me highly. It took me 24 years to say that properly, and I finally got the phonetics down. Me highly, she sent me highly. That is the person we are talking about. When you are using his name in an essay or something like that, look very fucking closely at how it is spelled, because it is like that. If you are citing she sent me highly extensively, I will take that as a deduction in the word count because it's really, really long. Now, what does me highly, she sent me highly actually do? Okay. Now, what we have here is an academic book. Yeah? Some of you have seen these. Some of you have only heard about them and have never bothered to engage with them, but some of you have actually tried reading them. Jay being our resident expert at this. Jay, what is the difference between reading a book like that and reading a novel?
In what sense?
In terms of the experience of being a reader.
Obviously, when you read a novel, it's more with your imagination. The words are there, but it's on you as a reader to kind of take those in the way that you imagine it, and that's kind of the fun you get out of reading non-special fiction novels. With that, it's more theoretical.
Okay, so how does it feel different when you're reading something theoretical?
I feel like, I don't know, you're more like an active reader in the sense that you don't get lost in novels and pages and get really carried away with yourself, but every page in an academic book you really try and take everything in anyway.
Excellent. As Jay says, in a novel you get lost. Pages and pages can pass and you don't realise it. When you're in that mode, you are reading, all of a sudden you've done a chunk of the book and you're enjoying it, right? It's fun. You're getting something from it. You are engaging it with a way where your imagination is powering that narrative forward. You picture the characters, you picture the scenarios, you empathise with the characters. I'm talking about a good novel here. A shit novel doesn't do all that. And that's interesting in itself too. With an academic book, as Jay says, it's a slower, more deliberate experience. What Jay has described is the experience of flow. In the novel, you are in a flow state. You are not thinking about reading. You are not thinking about what book it is. You are simply engrossed in the experience itself. And that experience is enjoyable, and it's not very difficult. It's something which doesn't pose a huge challenge. Now, the academic book poses us challenges. It is written in a very different way. It, in a way, is not written to be enjoyed. At least that's the experience I get when reading a lot of academic work. I don't enjoy doing it. It is written by people who don't understand that a reader should enjoy stuff. Instead, it is written to inform, but it requires us to actually put in different amounts of sort of cognitive energy into the experience of reading it. And it demands different things from us. If you like, it's more difficult. It's a more difficult experience. It's a harder thing to do. Now, when Mihaly, she sent Mihaly, I still have to say it like that because I can't do it properly. When she sent Mihaly was posing the theory of flow, what he was talking about was activities like playing chess, etc., when you've learned the rules. When you know the rules themselves, and you know the layout of the board, and you know what all the pieces do, the game becomes kind of automatic. It's fun. You enjoy doing it. You don't think about it anymore. Now, here's an experience. How much does that weigh? I don't need a quantitative number, but can you feel it in your hand?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're reading a novel, can you feel it in your hand?
No.
Ah, interesting. Because you're so absorbed in the experience itself that you don't recognise the feeling of things around you. Now, when we're particularly absorbed in a video game, I don't feel the weight of the controller in my hand. It doesn't feel like I'm doing it. I'm not looking at the controller, right? My hand movements are automatic. I've learned the interface of the game so well that I don't think anymore. My thumbs move independently, my fingers are on the triggers and they work just when I want them to work. It's absolutely organic and natural. When I first start playing a game, it ain't like that. The controller is something to be wrestled with. I have to get used to how this works. I have to get used to the control mechanism, and actually it's a bit cumbersome. There is a difference between the two modes of experience, and what Csikszentmihalyi Haile was actually interested in is what is that state that we get in. What we can think of it of is an optimal state. So the idea of flow is that we enter an optimal state of experience, where we experience something so deeply that the rest of the world really doesn't matter. You might think, okay, well that can describe some games. The experience of playing some games is like that, not the experience of playing all games. It's not really important. What is important is that it's the aim of all games. Some games don't do it because they haven't been designed very well. If we don't get into that optimal state, we can actually start to make criticisms of the game design itself. Maybe the interface is poor, maybe the setting is poor, for example, the narrative doesn't really engage us in particular ways, the aims of the game are really, not great in any particular sense. It's too simple, it can be too easy, and therefore we don't get into that sort of state of mind. Son of a bitch. Now, Lucy's studying for MRes, a particular set of games, is that you've played all these shit games, right? So Lucy's looking at what we call pink games. Games designed for, what should we say, young females?
Yeah, like preteens.
Preteens. Any of them put you in a state of optimal enjoyment?
I wouldn't say enjoyment. I would say I forget about the weights of controllers, the time, how much time has passed, because Little Surprise Babies took 4 hours to play, but then about 3 hours into it I got a bit angry. But you're still somewhat aware, you're not enjoying it, but it's kind of simple.
You're not enjoying it, but you've been suckered in.
Yeah.
Well, when we look at the sort of minutiae of what Csikszentmihalyi Haile was proposing, it will make sense about why that happens. But basically, the primary aim of any video game is to put you into that state. If you get somebody in a state of flow, win. You are not almost in a non-thinking state about doing this. So when we play for hours and hours and hours on end, and it happens to me fairly regularly, but the game I actually remember this happening a lot with was Red Dead Redemption 2. I'd be playing and playing, and all of a sudden, something would occur, something would happen outside. A car would go past or something, and it would jolt me out of the state I was in. And then I'd look at my watch, and it was 3 in the morning. I'm teaching at 9. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm not 12 anymore. What am I doing? I've got to go to bed, I've got to go to sleep, I've got to get up at 7 o'clock. I'm going to get 4 hours sleep here. And that went on for about a month when I was playing that game. Because it got me in such a comfortable sort of environment and state the controls were so intuitive, the world was so rich. I felt just at home there, and spent hours and hours and hours, not even pursuing missions, just trotting about, talking to people, hog-tying them, torturing them, setting fire to them. You know, the good shit that we get from video games. It's that kind of experience that we want to tap into. Now, what's interesting for assignments is this. Sometimes assignments are more interesting when you describe how that doesn't happen. You know, you get broken out of that mold. Almost doing an assignment about something which never puts you in flow gives you a more critical idea of why the game isn't very good or doesn't achieve those things. So the assignment last year by somebody, and she'd never played Red Dead Redemption. It's on the viewing list on YouTube. And she'd never played Red Dead Redemption 2 before. She just wanted to play it because her boyfriend played it all the time. And she went and played it. She didn't enjoy it. And basically the whole video is, yeah, well, this is shit. This is really boring. I hate this. And she's never, ever in a... And she goes into explaining how she never gets into a state of flow with it. Basically, she uses it in almost a negative sense to describe. So it is a really powerful way of understanding that. Basically, what it's important for us to understand is how it feels to play a game. Games can be deeply, deeply immersive. And we are looking at the rules of games, not representations. Games can look extremely pretty. You know, fantastic graphics, can look the business. They very rarely, on their own, result in a flow experience just from being in a very good-looking world. Instead, you know, superior graphics are a given in this day and age. It used to be thought of that very immersive games relied on looking very realistic in some ways. But that doesn't seem to hold. I get really immersed in Pac-Man. Pac-Man don't look realistic. Yeah. The game dynamics are what is very, very important. How the game is set up, and in particular, how the rules of the game and the game geography, what we call game world, interact with one another. How it is that what we're asked to do, how we're asked to do it, and the space we're put in to do it, link together to create an experience which is very, very deeply immersive for us. In this context, if I use the Pac-Man example again, Pac-Man, you know what I'm talking about when I say Pac-Man, right? Can you picture the screen? Yeah? It's not much of a game world, is it? Not very detailed. 6 colours, a maze, some dots. And what are you asked to do? What is the rule of the game? Eat all the dots, don't get eaten by the ghosts. It's not exactly, you know, super, super complex. But because the rules and the world, we've got a very simple set of rules and a very simple world, they match up with one another. You're not asked to do things which are deeply complicated in that world, so it doesn't need to be complicated. In something like Red Dead Redemption 2, where you're given a huge amount of control over what you can do, and you need a world which is big enough for you to realise all those possibilities. So you need something larger than a single screen which repeats over and over again, because what you're actually asked to perform is much more complex. And then time becomes a vital component of that. If you're asked to play a game for 70 hours, having one screen isn't a great idea. Nobody's going to do that. You're going to give up after 20 minutes. So instead, you need something which is much more complex. These are all aspects of how these things fit together. Now, Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience, is the most cited work in video game studies, without any question whatsoever. It is the sort of foundational, canonical set of concepts which game studies uses. When we play games, we're in a state of flow. It can't be any more simple than that. Flow is not unique to games. Games bring flow to the masses. I think that's a really, really interesting way of putting it. Now, she sent me Hailey, developed the theory of flow in the 1970s when he observed how he played with his dog. You might think, okay, this is a bit weird, what's going on here? Psychologist observed that his dog would enjoy particular games over and over again, but also he would enjoy the mechanisms of playing with the dog in that time, so the time and the space in which those games were being played became irrelevant. He became absorbed in the experience of play itself. So play, the activity that we're doing, becomes so absorbing that other factors outside of that game that we are playing become absolutely irrelevant to us. What Csikszentmihalyi wanted to do was capture and theorize what that experience is. He realized quite quickly, instantly, that this isn't an experience unique to him. This is almost a universal human experience. That we will do things that absorb us in a way in which time and space around us become irrelevant. In our era, if you want to think of a simple example of this, binge watching would be a great example. Where we sit, put something on Netflix, and all of a sudden it's 4 hours later and you actually haven't started that literature review which you've got to do for your dissertation, which is going to be due tomorrow. Because you've been watching the same crap for hours. Because why are you watching that stuff? Well, it gives you arousal, it's easy to watch, and the experience of it becomes absorbing in itself. It takes you away from these things. So, what Csikszentmihalyi was looking at is how we get to this state of maximum enjoyment. What is it? What are the factors that underpin this in itself? And how do we become so absorbed by something that we start to forget everything else around us? Why not working? So flow is the experience of intense absorption that one often feels when occupied by a play activity or playing a game. One of the interesting things about flow is that it is not just related to games itself, it is related to a number of other things. So, hands up, all of you who drive. Okay, quite a few of you do. Why don't the rest of you drive?
Studying for my driver's license right now.
Yeah? Is it easy?
I don't know. I don't feel like I'm really, learn how to do this. But I'm doing it because I have to do it.
Okay. What do you find difficult?
I feel like the numbers, like the details in certain things, in certain aspects, because I'm going back to Italy to do it. And
Okay.
it's way more complex because they give you specific weights, heights, things that you have to study off by heart and
Really?
always kind of discipline. So yeah,
How we used to do that years ago? Yeah, I had to do that.
it's very traditional.
Yeah, okay. It's difficult to learn all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else feel this? Has anyone started to drive and sort of not got there? It's okay if you haven't. It's not an easy thing to do. Okay, but let's talk to the experienced drivers in this room then. Easy to drive now?
Easy as breathing.
Easy as breathing. Why is that?
I just know how to do it.
You just
Okay.
don't think.
No, you don't
You
think.
don't think about it, you just do it.
Alice, you will get to the stage where it will become an unthinking activity. But that unthinking activity, do you drive an automatic car or do you drive a manual car? Manual. So, in any given situation in a manual car, you are operating your left hand and right hand independently and your left foot and right foot independently of one another. Try doing that right now. Okay, put your feet out. Stop crossing your legs. Okay, and what I want you to do is tap your left foot while moving your right foot in a circular motion. Okay? And no, you're not allowed to move your hands because what I want you to do is put your left hand on your head like this and put your right hand up like this and make this motion as you're doing those two things with your feet. Lucy won't do it because she recognises the rest of you look like twats. But it's not so easy that, is it? But that's what you're doing every time you drive a car. As soon as you put the key in the ignition, you are disengaging those four limbs and getting them to act independently of one another to achieve a particular aim. That's hard. The reason why learning to drive is so difficult is because you have to learn how to do that. How to independently control each of your limbs at any given point in time. It's not easy, it takes a while. But when you've learned it, it becomes absolutely automatic. And what happens when you're in that state of automatic? Do you remember every minutiae of the way that you have driven somewhere? No, I'm looking at Nikki in particular because I know she doesn't remember a fucking thing. She's crashed into cars, killed pedestrians, you know, this is just a death strew across the face. And she hasn't noticed at all, basically, you know. She's like, since she's moved from the Rhondda, you know, crime accidents have gone down 75%. So, no, we don't. We don't do this. I travel back and forth on a particular route all the time, and it's absolutely automatic to me. I don't think about it. I know that route, and I've been doing it for 20 odd years, and it is absolutely fundamentally, even though the challenge is on it, I know where the potholes are. I know exactly where the curves are, where you have to slow down and where you can accelerate from. I know if it's raining, you can do this, but if it's not raining, you can do this. I'm not thinking about that. It's all automatic to me. And I never, ever think about what's going on with my left hand, what's going on with my right hand, what's going on with my feet. It never occurs to me. What I'm trying to do is flip through my Spotify to find a good song. That's what I'm trying to do. It's an automatic thing. And I'm in this experience of intense absorption when I'm driving. To the extent to which the things that I have to do to drive don't occur to me. Now, there are certain things I have to do when I drive when I'm not in that state of absorption. Sometimes I'm very, very foolish and I go to Lidl in town. The car park by Lidl in town is exclusively populated by fucktards. And they drive like absolute maniacs. And then you have to be on your guard. Then you have to be watching everywhere around you because somebody's going to reverse out and smash into the side of you, or some child is going to run out in front of you. And I haven't got a problem with running kids over, but for some fucking reason other people do. So, you know, you can't do it, you know, or some imbecile just rolls out in front of you with a trolley full of shit and you're like, I don't care about them, but that trolley's going to scrape up the front of my car. I don't want to have to pay for that to be fixed. You can wash blood off, you can't wash scrapes out. At that point, I'm not in that state of absorption. It's like when Nikki tries to reverse park her car. Innit? It's hard reverse parking, isn't it? Yeah. You drive around looking for a space where you don't have to do it, don't you? Yeah. But then you're stuck and you think, oh crap, I gotta do parallel parking now. Don't worry, everyone does it, alright? Because it's actually, nobody wants to parallel park. Because it's a challenge, and actually we want the least amount of challenge possible when driving. You know? That's why I plot my routes. Swansea at the moment is some sort of free-form art installation where the art installation is roadworks. There's like a roadwork on every bloody road at the moment. So I'm desperately trying to think of how can I get from A to B without hitting any roadworks. I did that for the football the other night, and literally it took me into Morriston, and I had to go down that way rather than go over because I was like, that's the easiest way. Because I don't want to bother with roadworks because it takes out the enjoyment, it takes this feeling of absorption away. We do things deliberately so we hit this state. Driving can be a really enjoyable thing for people. Something we can enjoy doing. But we don't want any barriers to us reaching this state of automaticity when we do it. So flow producing activities have clear goals and feedback on them. Players in games have a sense of what they're trying to achieve and feedback that indicates progress. When we're in a state of flow, we feel like we're making progress in some way. Just in a state of driving, we feel that too. When we feel we are getting somewhere. You never hit the state of flow when you're in a traffic jam. Because it's stop, start, stop, start. You're not getting anywhere. You're getting frustrated. Frustration doesn't work in a state of flow. It's like a frustration-free zone in many ways.
So could you say, like, you know, if you're on like a multiplayer game and then your Wi-Fi is playing up like fuck?
Yeah, no flow. No flow with that, right?
No flow with that.
No, because you are continually being frustrated in your goals, and there's no clear way of getting to that point. This is often a problem with poorly designed games. That either the tasks they ask you to do are too short, so you never get into that, or there are so many insurmountable barriers to feeling that state that you just give up. You say, this is really frustrating, I'm actually not enjoying this experience at all. It's exactly the reason why 75% of you in this room will never ever finish an academic book. And that's okay.
They might.
Who?
Jay.
Or you fucking finish the one, yeah. But, you know, what you've also got to consider with flow is that some people enjoy different things. And Jay actually enjoys reading academic books, so he does get that sick feeling of flow. I don't know how. It's a perverse feeling, and I don't understand it. But fair play to Jay. He's doing the work for the rest of us. He's doing God's work. Now, when skills are balanced with challenges, the players enter the flow channel and become immersed within their activity. This is the key thing to understand in flow. Flow is all about balancing skill and challenge. Now, Jay's academic reading is a very, very good example of this. Jay's a very accomplished reader and a very accomplished academic thinker. So when he's picking up Graham Kirkpatrick's books, he enjoys doing it. He's got the skills that pay the bills in this context. He can read that, not a bother. He knows what's going on. Because, how does Jay do this? Well, Jay's been reading books since he was young. Jay's been also reading very challenging books since he was young because he finds them enjoyable. Yeah? And so it moves on from that. Now, Jay's reading of all those challenging books has given him a deep, situated knowledge of literary techniques, knowledge about topics, and knowledge about how books actually can be consumed in a very efficient and enjoyable fashion. Okay. For people who don't engage with books, and there are lots, people who don't, read books when they're kids, books can be really, really intimidating. You say, I'll tell a student, go away and read this book. Can I do it as trolling very often? I know they're not going to do it, because they don't have the discipline and history of doing that as kids. So books look intimidating. They don't enjoy the experience of doing it. Jay can swallow these things. I give you 10 books to read. I know you're going to read them all. Whereas there's other students I can say, right, you need to read this book. I know it's not going to be done. I mean, you do need to do it, but I also know you're not going to do it. So why is it that Jay can do that? Because he has the skills. He has the skills to do it. And therefore the challenge that comes with engaging with something really, really difficult is less for Jay. Yeah? So you meet it in a different way. Now with other students, sometimes I have to recommend, well, don't read the whole book, but perhaps read chapters 1 and 3. So I'm reducing the challenge to meet the skills. Yeah? To try and tailor an experience which will actually be enjoyable, because if you don't enjoy doing it, you're not going to get anything out of it at the end of the day. It's really, really difficult to actually work with things that you genuinely don't enjoy doing. Because of that, you do have to think. It's like with the first years, and you all did the first year course with me. Was I ill?
You were on the lot painkillers when you were there.
That's right, yeah, I was on opioids for 3 months. It was a sweet time, telling you. Yeah, because I'd had my leg rebuilt, right? So, I don't know how Chris did this with you, obviously, because I wasn't there. But the whole purpose of the reading each week in that was to build. It started with really short stuff. And by the end I was given full papers, full chapters of books and stuff like that. Never a whole book, because nobody's going to do that. But try and build up from 2 to 3 pages, up to 10 pages, up to 15 pages, and go this way. With the exception of that William Merrin task, which is going to be a 40-page chapter. Because it saves me from teaching the history of media studies, basically, so I couldn't be fucked to do it. And he'd already done it, so why do I want to do it? But it's about trying to build up and up and up. Now you'll note in year 3 already you're given a lot more reading to do. Yeah. Because in year 1 you're not given so much, in year 2 you're given a little more. It follows this notion of flow. As your skills improve as students, the challenge raises. Now year 3 is really, really difficult, to be fair. I won't make no bones about it. If you can finish year 3 with a really good mark, you can do masters or PhD. It's actually no problem. It's not that much more difficult. You know, that's the pitch of year 3 of a degree. That's how it should be. That you're challenged in particular ways. Some people will find that fine because their skills meet that challenge at a particular level and actually they fly through it. For some people it's a difficult time. And what we've got to be mindful of as academic staff is helping people through that difficult time and trying to sort of encourage and develop their skills in a way which makes it easier to do. So we hit that sort of phase. So that flow, that idea of the flow channel exists in all sorts of areas. It's not just something which is apparent in game studies, it's something which is across many, many different areas. So immersion in a mediated experience is definitely not limited to games. We get immersed in all sorts of different media. You know, in a good film, where we come in with a series of ideas that we've had from the past, you know, and we hit that film, you know, and we really know what's going on. 2 hours can seem like so, yeah? But if the film is boring and shit because we don't understand the context, it's not very well made, the acting's really bad, etc., we don't hit that flow state. It becomes a chore to get through those 2 hours. I'm sure many of you will relate to this experience, right? You've been on a date, and the person you're on a date with has chosen the film for you to go and watch, and it's an absolute piece of crap. Have we been there, people? Alice is thinking about it, she's thinking like, you know, nah, I'm always the one who chooses. That's interesting in itself, because I don't want to say this is a certainty, Alice, but it's a possibility that some of your dates may not have had an optimal experience in those films.
Probably, yeah.
It's a probable experience, right? Whereas you enjoyed,
Yeah.
because you chose the films, right? Because they were films that you like, stuff that you want to see, yeah? Now, I can't do that if I'm going on a date with someone. Well, one, I don't go on. I do go on dates with my partner, but it's like, we're not like, it's not like a first date or anything. That was a long time ago, right? But if we're going to the cinema, it's like I can't choose what to see because she's not interested in violent, depraved filth, you know. And it's her loss at the end of the day. But nevertheless, all right, you know, I can't take her to watch the kind of things I want to see because there's in some occasions there's only specialised cinemas that will actually show that kind of film. So I have to choose very carefully. Whereas if she chooses a film, I have to go and watch it. It's not you know, and I get in a hissy fit and I'm like, you know, chucking popcorn everywhere, like a terrible ADHD, so I'm fiddling with shit all the time and, you know, picking the threads out of the cinema seat and, you know, all this fucking nonsense, right? Flipping the guy in front of me's head and stuff, you know. I'll take a laser pointer with me and I'll try to do that. So I'm a nightmare, basically, yeah? Because I'm not in the flow state, right? Because I'm not there with it, you know? Because I don't feel, you know, if you like, the skills element of it is I'm not imbibed in that kind of narrative, I'm not imbibed in that kind of film, it doesn't interest me, it's a real challenge for me to get into that sort of thing. And so the challenge of watching the film, and any given media source that we engage with, it poses a challenge to us. We don't think of it in these terms, because we usually think of media as things that we're comfortable with. But actually that's because the challenge of them is really low for us, because we have interests, we have skills, we have a desire to do things, which meets that media in particular ways. We tend to veer away from the stuff that we find really dull. That's why we don't usually consume huge amounts of like political programming. You know? That's why that stuff isn't popular. Because boring, right?
I feel like we struggle getting in flow also when you're a beginner in general, like when you start gaming and the challenges are too complicated because you've never played certain games. It's difficult to be in a state of flow.
100% right. And the mastery of game design in many ways is to try and design game experiences with a low entry point. So you develop the skills early on in a very, very non-threatening, non-challenging way. It's not so much the game that always springs to mind when I think about this is not Red Dead Redemption 2, it's the original Red Dead Redemption. And the first thing you were asked to do was be in a race with another character on a horse. Now, the actual control of the horse in Red Dead Redemption 1 wasn't that straightforward, but first thing you're asked to do, and you fail a couple of times at doing this before you win the race, is race the horse around. And all of a sudden, all you're doing is focusing your activity on gaining a bit of mastery around the primary mechanism of moving around the game. If you didn't do that thing, it would actually be a really difficult game to play. But you very quickly pick up the controller skills to move very fast on the horse, because you set this challenge. So what the game is, and there's nothing else you have to do. You don't have to shoot anything, you don't have to look at anything, you don't have to hunt anything, you don't have to rob anything, all the things you're asked to do later. And basically games like that are always designed where the first act, if you like, is like, you're just going to do this one thing in this activity. And then we'll start putting them all together. And then you'll be like, oh wow, check me out. I can do all this good stuff. It's a mastery of game design. And this is, in the history of video games, this has always been the way of doing things. If you look at something like Super Mario, if you look at the original Super Mario game, level 1.1, piece.
What about GTA?
Very much the same. If you're playing the mission-based games in GTA, they've always been the same. Even going back to GTA 1 in 1997, the sort of weird, it looks really strange now, the overhead one. First mission, basically go and rob a car. So the primary thing that you need to do in the entire game, just go and do that. We don't want you to do anything else. We want you to rob a car and drive it to this little spot. That's all. Learn the mechanisms of the game first. You can do the complicated, really enjoyable stuff afterwards. Just learn at first how to do the basics. That's really good game design. Worst game ever made, by consensus opinion, is E.T. for the Atari, right, 1983. The reason being, nobody has any fucking idea how to play that game. You turn it on, you move, and all of a sudden you fall into this chamber and you're stuck there. There's something you need to do, but no one can ever work out what it is. And so you do that about 20 times, and then you pick up the game cartridge and smash it, because you're going to fucking... The game never teaches you anything. It assumes that like you will know instantly what to do here, and it's like, no, I'm just moving like you normally do. And I don't know what the hell is going on. So the game never takes time to actually teach you anything. And I think that's a mastery of game design sort of thing, and how you get people into flow. Because if you think, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to forward you, because this will actually illustrate this really well. If we can get the graph up. I'll come back to some of this stuff. This is what she sent me highly proposed a flow state looks like if we plotted it on a graph, right? Where you have arousal and efficacy. Those are the two axes he uses. So arousal, how much we enjoy something. Efficacy, if you like, how difficult or how easy it is to do something, right? So, if we start low with a low challenge, but we have a low skill set to begin with, we're in that flow channel. As you increase the challenge and you increase your skills with it, you stay in that sort of optimal state in the middle of it. So you don't want to throw people straight into, oh my God, this is the most difficult thing I've ever done, because you're not going to enjoy it. You're instantly going to back away from it. So instead, what you need, in terms of designing a game, you keep it quite simple. It's like kids playing football, right? When you're 6, 7 years old, play football out in the street or wherever. Well, kids don't play in the street anymore. I'm extrapolating from my own experience, right? And it's loose, nobody's keeping the time, there's no real positions or anything like that. It's more of a free-for-all, you know, but you're enjoying it, kicking the ball, scoring, that's the big thing. Nobody cares about doing an amazing pass or anything like that, or the tactical sophistication of your team against the opposition. You just want to score. As you move forward, the game becomes more complex. You learn that actually, if you went and played another team like that, you'd get your asses kicked really, really quickly. So instead you've got to have discipline. So you start learning about these things, but you've already learned basics. So you're ready to move up in challenge to the next thing, which is, okay, we have different positions. We have defenders, we have midfielders, we have attackers. We structure the team in a particular way, and you think, oh, okay, I'm ready to move with this. And then as you play more as a kid, you learn about the sophistication of each of those positions. And you develop a position for yourself. And you're comfortable within it, because you understand, you can't understand what position you play in until you understand all the other positions on the pitch. Because you know how they work together then, and you know how to counteract how the other team works together as well. So you're actually at a really high level of challenge at that point. You know, when you're like 15, 16 and you're running out and you're playing centre midfield for a football team, you've got all sorts of things to think about. But you've been playing it for years. You're ready for the challenge of doing that. And it still remains enjoyable. Till it gets to the point, perhaps, when you're 16 and you think, right, well, the next stage up from that is now become a professional footballer. The challenge is too big, right? It's like, okay, so not only do I have to do all of these things, but I have to be super bloody fit as well. And then so on, it's like, nah, fuck it. Fags and booze. That's more my fucking pace. I'm now really extrapolating from my life experience at that point, right? So, a flow-producing activity balances an individual skill with the activity's challenges. Now, great game design takes that into account. A really good game, if you look at classics from history, look like Super Mario, right? Sonic the Hedgehog. First level of Sonic the Hedgehog is really, really easy. It takes 2 minutes to run flat out through. It's fun, because you go really fast, collect loads of rings, there's very little challenge with it. And you learn how to, there's basically 2 controls, it's like move and jump. And make yourself into a little ball, and kill stuff. And it's like, God, this is amazing, yeah, I'm really, really into that. As it goes on in the game, you're asked to do substantially more things as that little blue spiky hedgehog. But you're ready to do it because why it's a masterful game is it balances skill and challenge out at every level. So you learn a bit more each level you go through. To the next level, you learn a bit more and more until you get to the end and you can beat the big bad at the end, which is really, really challenging. So, I just want to go back a little. Csikszentmihalyi Haile didn't just sit here and come up with this. This was experimental work. He's a psychologist, so like most psychologists, does a lot of experimental work. Most of that experimental work took place in the 1970s, and what he was looking at really was an interview method to try and understand, not just from his own, extrapolate from his own experience, but put subjects into flow experiences and ask them, what did you feel? Why did you feel like that? To try and unpick the mechanisms of it. So you looked at chess players, artists, dancers, surgeons, basketball players, to understand how they felt flow. What have all these people got in common? Expertise. They know those disciplines. Right? Basketball player doesn't think about how far away the basket is when they shoot. They just shoot. So they'll be doing it and doing it and doing it. They know instinctively and intuitively from where they are on the court how hard they need to shoot, how much effort they need to put in the shot. They know if they're standing at the free throw line, they put in less into the shot than if they're standing behind the 3-point line. They don't think that, they just do it. You know? Playing football, I know you hit the ball harder if you're 30 yards out than if you're 8 yards out, because you need to put more effort into making the ball travel that distance. You don't think of that when you shoot. It doesn't go through your mind. And you don't think, come on foot, travel faster. It just happens, right? What was the defining characteristic of all those interviews is that they all used the word flow. They all described their experience as being in the flow of some way. You know, when I'm doing this, I feel like I'm going with the flow. I feel like I'm in a flow. And when he looked at particular ones, like the artists and chess players, they often reported that, you know, they would be really thirsty or really hungry or dying to go to the toilet, and they just kept on doing it anyway. They ignored discomfort. They ignored sort of basic bodily functions in order to keep on doing something that they love doing. Now, how many of us have been playing a game where we have ignored that feeling that, oh my God, I need to go to the toilet? And we'd be like, yeah, I really need to go, but I just want to finish this bit. I just want to finish this, you know? So it's that sense of complete absorption that links flow with play, basically. That's where we can draw links between Csikszentmihalyi and for Johan Huizinga, for example, who I talked about in the second lecture, right? When Huizinga was talking about play in Homo Ludens, he says, in this intensity, this absorption, this power maddening lies the very essence, the primordial quality of play. For Huizinga, it's that which play is all about. That feeling of the world being bracketed off and us being completely absorbed in what we are doing. That's the essence of play. That's what play does that other things can't do. And it's interesting when you think about some of those other things, you know, they all tend to be games sort of stuff. But the dancers, for example, is that a game? But dancers will very often talk about what they do in terms of play. That they playfully do things, you know, because it becomes so intuitive to them. It feels like a game. So the experience of flow is all about this deep absorption. And it's an experience that we carry into other things, but, you know, play seems to be the one which is most easy for us to understand. So, you know, playing a piano or a video game might be difficult and unpleasant at points, but even afterwards we can view, once we've got over those things and learned them, they're actually seen as enjoyable experiences in themselves. What is interesting about Csikszentmihalyi's theory is that it's applied to different areas. So flow is not something which is just applied to games anymore, but actually, as I said, curriculum design and education is all about flow. In fact, your entire education has been designed around the principle of flow. When you started school in year 1, were you asked to read Das Kapital by Karl Marx? I mean, if you were, I'm impressed by that school. I've got to be honest, they got high aspirations, but no, you weren't. What were you asked to do? It's like make a painting, your fingers,
macaroni
shit like that.
dried
Yeah, that dried macaroni shit, right? Which you never see anywhere else. Where does that shit come from?
I think I've got one in my house, you know.
Yeah, decent.
Yeah.
What sucks these days is, like, you know, kids don't get the full rich experience of school anymore because you guys probably had, like, you know, toxic-free quit stimulators to do that. We had the full-on stuff. So you become like a solvent addict at like a very early age when you go to school in the 80s. It's not as fun these days. I was actually talking about this on the weekend of, like, you know, what lesson? Somebody asked me, what lesson did you really like at school? I said, design and technology. I said, oh, we good at it, is it? Nah. We just used to sniff glue all the time. You don't get that anymore, I'm afraid. Sorry, guys, your education has been woefully inadequate. So, we see the adoption of flow in all sorts of activities in an attempt to make things feel fun. Education, for example, is designed around the principle of flow, where you have this balancing of skill and challenge or areas of education, because it's supposed to make the experience of education more enjoyable. It doesn't work for Em, unfortunately, because she's like never lost the will to play for it. But it's, and I've already explained it in the context of university. Now, what we might be misunderstanding here is the principle of enjoyment. You know, being asked to, you know, do a content analysis is not an enjoyable thing to do. But it is around this principle that we do it. So, flow theory has basically been applied to everything. If one was to go forth and work in something like human resources, or work organisational psychology, or occupational health, it's actually a foundational concept in those fields. So, you know, well, if you went to an occupational therapist and, you know, my job stinks, what they'll try to do is break down what you do and match the skills challenge gap. So they're basically adopting that theory at all times. That's basically what occupational therapists do. So they look at, okay, you hate your job. Nobody ever goes to occupational therapy if they like their job, right? So you hate your job. What does your job do? Have you got the skills to do them? And what they usually find is, actually your skills way outmeasure what you're actually asked to do, so you're really dissatisfied. And then they'll go back to your manager and say, can you ask them to do something like this? Because they're really bullshit. They feel like their life has no meaning. That's primarily everything that goes to occupational therapists. Because there's a mismatch between skills and challenge, always. So, this idea in game studies has what we call paradigmatic power. Paradigmatic power is when a concept becomes so ubiquitous that it is used in everything. You can't write about game studies without talking about flow, for example. If you try to publish a research article on game studies and you didn't mention flow, you're in big trouble. Because it's become so ingrained in the area. That's changing a little now, to be fair, but you know, it's almost an unquestioned reference, for example. So we absolutely need to understand this, because engaging with game studies without understanding flow is a pointless exercise. Let's take 5. Let's go back into a state of flow. No, no,
Like this
bad.
weekend. So, you know Rob Bannister,
I hear this conflict.
Can I show you a tweet? And I want your opinion on
I didn't write it, did I?
it. No.
Let me just not look at it.